Let's bring in Andrew Lippo. He's the president of Lippo Oil Associates. Good to have you back on the show, Andrew.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, as we heard there last week, the White House announcing it's releasing strategic reserves. How will that make a difference at the gas pump? And at what point could Americans actually see the effect of that?
Well, the release of the Strategic Petroleum Reserves by the United States, in conjunction with the announced release of 60 million barrels from the member countries of the International Energy Agency, has actually put pressure on oil prices. And we've seen, in conjunction with crude oil prices going down, gasoline prices have gone down. And in fact, every day we're seeing a better improvement in gas prices for the consumer.
And then in conjunction also, we know that some states have suspended their gas tax. Of course, consumers are happy, but what's the impact of that on the state itself?
Well, there's good news for the consumer because they're paying less, but for the state itself, they're losing money that satisfied their budgetary spending, mainly on roads or whatever other programs they have. So they're really shuffling around the money, trying to give back to the consumer, but it is at the expense of state spending.
And saying that, do you think then that a federal gas tax holiday is likely at this point?
Well, it would be one of the easiest things and quickest way to give the consumer relief. The federal excise tax on gasoline is 18 cents a gallon. But I think many members of the administration and Congress are wary of doing that because that is the money that goes to improve our roads.
So at this hearing then, Andrew, oil executives being blamed for high prices, is that warranted?
Well, I don't think so. It's a repeat of the grievances and that Congress has had before. The fact of the matter is that as the world economies were reopening, world oil demand went up. And during the pandemic, investment in the oil patch went down. As that demand did recover, we found that OPEC Plus was unable to even meet their production quota increases. So we already had a shortfall and prices were rising prior to Russia invading the Ukraine. But as prices did get to $90 a barrel and higher, we have seen more money flow into the oil patch. Exxon and Chevron today said that they were increasing production by 25 and 10% respectively in the Permian Basin. And in fact, over the last several weeks, we've seen production in the United States rise by 200,000 barrels a day. And in 2023, we expect that production in the United States is going to reach an all-time record.
I'm glad you bring up Ukraine because all of this, our entire conversation, triggered really by the violence in Ukraine. We've heard of new sanctions now on Russia, future sanctions on its energy sector. How will all this affect, global energy as we know it?
Well, it's having a big effect on global energy. And in fact, the sanctions that were imposed on financial institutions and individuals led refiners to shy away from the purchase of Russian oil. And of course, that was compounded by a number of countries banning that purchase as well. As we reduce the purchases of Russian oil and we look for alternative supplies, what you find is those alternative supplies are not readily available because in OPEC Plus, really, it's Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait that have the spare production capacity, and they're unwilling to use it to replace Russian oil that is no longer being purchased by a number of refiners.
Right, of course. Andrew, we have just less than a minute here. We really need to talk about the future of European dependence on Russian oil. Do you see them gradually weaning off?
Well, I do. And in fact, I mean, what you're seeing is now kind of an ugly divorce between the energy consumers and the energy producers. And over the next 3, 4, 5 years, I do expect that Europe is going to reduce its dependence on Russian oil and natural gas. We saw in Germany, they're already fast-tracking 2 import LNG facilities that will allow them to take advantage of the growing excess of natural gas in the United States.